It's the Brad and John Show.
And it's the Brad and John Show for Monday, March 10th. This is B Block, which means we started right around 7:20 or so. But it's my fault we're late this morning because we had some technical issues I had to deal with. And John, I don't mean to beat a dead horse. You know, I would never want to do that. And John, sometimes you accuse me of overindulging in certain things. I would never, ever do that.
Unicorn fart dust. That's right. Unicorn fart dust.
I would never do that, John, so I just want you to know that. Okay.
There are several words that are banned in the Combest household, and that F word is one of them.
Okay. You talked in a previous segment, the previous A block, you talked about the coroner of Cape Girardeau County, correct? He was Cape Girardeau County?
Correct, yeah. Wavis, the former coroner of Cape Girardeau County.
And essentially he's been found guilty of, what would you say, four different issues?
Yeah, forgery and a little bit of petty theft.
Right. Do you remember this story? It was a horrendous accident. I think it was in South City, where a guy ran a red light and hit a car, and it was, or maybe a minivan. It had like 8 or 9 people in it, and the minivan was pushed over a bridge railing and fell to the pavement below the bridge, and 4 people were killed, and everybody in the car, the people who weren't killed, were in terrible shape. Do you remember this crazy story?
I do, and I remember what happened afterwards.
One of the firefighters was accused of stealing credit cards and I think gift cards from one of the victims. I don't know if it was one of the victims who was dead or one of the victims who survived. Do you remember that story?
I do remember it very well. And what happened to that gentleman, Brad? Was he punished? Has he put his head down in shame and taken a private sector job somewhere?
No, he got fired by the fire department and then hired by the public works department. I read that. I know it's an old story, but I thought about that over the weekend. Don't ask me why it came into my mind. I thought to myself, and people talk about what's wrong with the city. Don't you see a glaring problem with that whole deal right there?
Yeah, I think so. And then I also think it's never just one thing, but it also reminds me of the fact that the city is so desperate for workers that they're going to lower their standards. And that guy can obviously go get a job working with the city, because it's not like St. Louis City can hold a high standard for its employees. You get what I'm saying?
John, let's go back to your corporate days when you were with Monsanto/Bayer. Let's say there was somebody that got, in trouble, and it was a case where it wasn't necessarily that they just got fired, but they were also charged with some kind of crime. Let's say they were stealing money out of somebody's drawer or something like that. Somebody had, or they were doing something where it was not only they were fired for improper conduct within the corporate environment, but they were also charged with a crime and essentially going to court, and they were proven guilty. Do you think that person would be rehired by that company, John? Do you think that
Absolutely not. And in fact, I think I don't think this is speaking out of school at all. We had an employee who was really well respected and who I happen to like a lot. And companies give away gift cards. You can give away, as a manager, you have a certain budget that you can give away gift cards to your employees for great work on projects. And I think she had given out a couple like $25 or maybe $50 gift cards to employees that she was friendly with. And the company policy was so stringent that she ended up getting dismissed. And nobody knows all the details, but the gist of it is the company was like, even as a manager, you can't give out, Chili's or Target gift cards to your friends for $50 just because you say they do a good job. Like, it's got to go through a more official process if you're going to be giving away company money. And we're talking, $25 and $50 gift cards to employees. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's how seriously at Monsanto it was taken.
John, can I give you a quick little story here that happened to me many years ago? We had a contract. Yeah. My company, my traffic reporting company, had a contract with a big Fortune 100 company, okay? And we had a meeting where the couple corporate executives from this company came over to our place, and it was sort of an appreciation. They were essentially appreciating us, and in return, we appreciated them, and they were 2 women, and we went and bought them some nice spa gift certificates, and we gave them to these 2 women, and they graciously accepted them. The next day, one of the two women called me and said, we didn't want to make a scene of this, but we're not allowed to take any gratuities from people we have a business relationship with, and we didn't say anything during the celebration yesterday, but we're going to be returning these gift certificates to you because we can't take them. And I felt really bad about that, because I thought I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, but you didn't know, Brad.
Well, I put them in a bad situation, but they handled it properly, and
Yeah.
we went and picked them up at the office. They left them in an envelope at the front desk. We picked them up and we gave them to our other employees. Hey, you get a certificate. You get a certificate. And you get a certificate. That kind of a thing. Okay, John, I have to, and you make fun of me telling stories. Okay. Over the weekend, I made another 911 call. Matter of fact, on Saturday night, there was an accident on 170. I was cruising south on 170, and accident. It didn't look really bad, but the problem was it was in the left lane. Man, those accidents where the people don't move off the highway and they just stick in the left lane.
Yeah, unbelievable. Who thinks that's okay?
Left lane's the worst because, that's where all the speed jockeys hang out, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yesterday morning, when I was down working at the crap transmitter site, I went from the crap transmitter site to our other transmitter site, and I used Augusta Bottom Road. That means nothing to you, but Augusta Bottom Road is this road if you go across the Missouri River, north and 47, across the Missouri River out of Washmo, and the very first road you come to is Augusta Bottom Road. And it's literally, mostly, for the most part, it's probably about half paved and half unpaved. The part in Warren County is unpaved. You make a right just if you come off the bridge and you go down that road, and you're actually on the levee. It's a road that's built on top of the levee. And then you get into St. Charles County and it becomes paved, and there's a really sharp curve that as you go, and people who've driven this before, they know exactly where I'm talking about. Okay, I don't know why this was, and maybe because it's fun, you make fun of me making 911 calls. This happened, I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that. It happened on Christmas Eve. And I'm using the shortcut. I'm going from Washington back into St. Charles County. I came across the bridge, made the right there in Augusta Bottom Road, went on the gravel section, then I'm on the paved section, and I'm on the paved section where it makes a sharp turn. And to the right of where its sharp turn is, there's a big ditch, like a big drainage ditch that ultimately drains into the Missouri River. And as I drove across there, I thought to myself, are those wheels of a car I see down there? So I backed up, and sure enough, there's an upside-down car. I thought it was a car. It turned out it was a pickup truck in that ditch. And I thought to myself, you know what? I need to get out and check to make sure there's nobody in there, somebody wasn't hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
No skid marks or anything like that. So I thought to myself, there's nobody in it. So I dialed 911. Okay? Dialed 911 and told them exactly where it was. And the dispatcher knew the area pretty well. And I said, this is where it's at, right at the bend right there. And it looks like it's a car upside down in the ditch. So I got home that night, and on the 10 o'clock news, the lead story was a story about a young man who had a fight with his parents. I think he was 14 or 15 years old at the time. Had a fight with them, essentially stole their pickup truck. Turned out to be like a small pickup truck, like a Chevy S10 or something like that, or a Ford Ranger, and left Washington to go to his uncle's house in St. Peters. And he missed the curve, and his car overturned, and he was killed. And that was the car I saw down there. And the bizarre part of it was it'd been there for a couple of days, because this was Christmas Eve, December 24th. Apparently this happened on the 22nd. And they did not know what happened to him. He was one of those things, they had a missing, I don't know if there were Amber Alerts back there in the whole bit, but a missing person report in the whole bit. And John, I have to tell you, you make fun of me making 911 calls, but that's a 911 call which really had some consequences. And I've always felt bad about the fact that I didn't get out of my car and go down there and check on him. Now, obviously, he would have been dead because of the fact that, I think when the story ended out, he was killed by impact. It wasn't like he was trapped in the car and he died, in the cold for 2 days or something like that. But it always has bothered me. Now, I know you make fun of my 911 calls all the time, but that's one of them that I thought to myself, okay, I did the right thing, but maybe I didn't do enough of the right thing. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think there's probably very little value when you revisit it and punishing yourself over and over again. You tell yourself, that a good person would have called 911, which is true, which is what you did. But you tell yourself that a better person would have stopped what you're doing, parked somewhere, risk your own safety by walking down, discovered a dead man to whom you could do nothing, carry the vision of a dead young man throughout the rest of your entire life, and somehow that would have made you a better person.
I don't know. It's one of those things. It's you look back and you go like, okay, did I make the right decision or not? But I think it was one of these things where when I saw this on the news, I thought to myself, oh my God, because I even said a 911 caller. I go, that was me, and it was so bizarre. And you think about that, because at the time, God, my youngest son would have probably been, probably it was 20 years ago. My youngest son would have been like, well, it would have been 10, but my other son would have been like 13. My oldest son would have been 20 years ago. He would have been like 20 or something like that. It's one of those things you see that as a parent, you go like, man,
Yeah. And do you think, for you, Brad, do you think that's a constructive thought?
I don't know. It was sort of weird that it hit me because...
Yeah, it's not. I mean, you know the answer to that.
Well,
it's not a constructive thought, and revisiting it doesn't help you at all.
Right, but it's one of those things where I don't normally drive Augusta Bottom Road anymore. I used to do it all the time, and it was just one of those things when I took that curve, I thought to myself, and don't take this the wrong way, but I thought to myself, John's always making fun of me about my 911 calls, but
I am.
There was an example of a 911 call.
Well, hey, you're batting a good 1% with relevant calls to 911. Now, really, when you were driving down there, you were going to that brand new Hoffman Hotel and Conference Center, right?
Don't get me going about that. I mean, hey, that is
a lot of headlines over the weekend about the Hoffmanns, Brad.
Story
in the Washington Missourian, story in the Post-Dispatch today.
I didn't see it. Tell me about it.
Excuse me for clearing my throat there. Ethan Colbert from the Post-Dispatch. The headline is another major Hoffman project, a hotel and conference center, on hold in Augusta. The gentleman from the Hoffman family, who's their spokesman, the gentleman, I think his name is Don Simon. Yeah, he's CEO. He's like, it's still one of our plans to build it. We just decided to table it for a little while. So throughout the story, this gentleman's like, hey, we're still looking at all this stuff. Hold your horses. Like, stop being so antsy about everything. We're just evaluating. When you have your hand in so many businesses, when you're that diversified, you can't go full bore with everything,
The sad part of that is, can I make a projection?
Yeah, you can.
That hotel will never be built. It's never going to be built.
Yeah, I mean, there's at a certain point you just have to reevaluate, right? Depending on where you are, and you have to cut your losses. Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Well, this is anecdotal evidence, and me driving through Augusta, not nearly as much as I used to, but I have to tell you, and I think it would be interesting, and of course the Hoffmanns would never release this information. I want to say, anecdotally, by me driving through there and seeing cars in parking lots, the wineries, I say over the last 3 or 4 years, the number of people going to Augusta has gone down. I say that there are less people going to Augusta than
fewer people. Yeah.
That pre-Hoffman, post-Hoffman. I say the pre-Hoffman numbers are higher than the post-Hoffman numbers. Would I be terrible to say something like that?
No, not at all. But maybe that would be the same. I wonder what the trends are in Napa. I wonder what the trends are for bourbon tourism in Kentucky, and I wondered if that's just a national trend.
Point well taken.
People are certainly drinking a lot less today than they were 3 years ago.
Are they really? Why is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are more calorie conscious. I think people there's a whole host of reasons. Again, it's never just one thing. But unless I'm mistaken, we've seen beer and spirits and wine consumption decrease. And generally, if you're dead set on avoiding your problems by getting high, just go to a dispensary. I'm serious. Like you have many more options now. If you hate your wife, or your suburban fat schlub husband never follows through on his promises, and he's a middle manager, and you thought he would be a CEO by age 40, just go have some gummies. Like, just forget about it. Go to the pool, get high, let your kids flop around and yell and scream and run on the pool deck when they shouldn't. Like, there's many ways to get high now. Brad, my favorite part of this Hoffman story is the Hoffmanns, I think this is their highlight. They launched the Miss Augusta cruise line that now docks at Klondike Park along the Missouri River.
Do you know I side, you're funny you Bruce brought this up because it just tweaks something in my brain, which sometimes doesn't work very well anymore. But I'm going to the Cottleville Weldon Springs Chamber of Commerce dinner or luncheon tomorrow. Okay, remember it was a month ago I got thrown out.
Are you wow? Now, Brad, are you? How do you feel about this? I mean, are you prepared to get kicked out?
Well, I'm now.
Or have you greased the skids already?
I'm now a member. I was a guest on the day I got thrown out. I joined the day after, so I'm now a member. Okay, and the reason I bring this up, first off, it's interesting. It's at my old alma mater for my master's degree. Not trying to, sound like I'm a smart guy, but I'm not, because my master's is from Lindenwood. If my master's was from Washington University, then I would be able to say I'm a smart guy. But since my master's is from Lindenwood, it knocks it down a couple notches. The luncheon's at the Spellman building, which I believe is the center, what they call the community center. But
like the hub, yeah, it's like the hub of Lindenwood.
But what's interesting is, do you know who the sponsor for the luncheon is?
Is it the Hoffmanns?
Miss Augusta.
Are you serious?
I swear that's the sponsor for the luncheon.
And is there a drawing? Can you win a romantic cruise on the Miss Augusta cruise line?
Well, see, here I go. I won't say once again. I almost did it. Okay, if you remember, this is like the Hoffman, shall we say, overselling things. When they first talked about having this cruise line, and remember, Miss Augusta for the first 6 months of his life was up in the Mississippi in Portage de Sioux, which is like, okay, it doesn't make any sense. Matter of fact, when they have the press conference, they had the press tour, which I didn't go to. I got invited to. It was up in the Mississippi, and I'm thinking to myself, wouldn't you wait till they put the dock down there at Klondike Park to have the opening, the grand opening, whatever? When they first came out with this, they said they were going to have excursions between Washington and Augusta. And the only problem was, once again, here we go, the people in Washington were going like, there's no dock big enough to tie that boat off. There's a very small dock down at Rennick Riverfront Park in Washington where you can tie small, like pleasure craft, like, I don't know, a 20-foot Chris Craft or whatever the heck that is.
Yeah.
But there's no place for a big boat like that. And I'm thinking to myself, are they going to build a dock down there? Well, but then it came out that say, oh, well, we've thought about that, and now we're not going to go to Washington because it would take us a half an hour to get there. Now, John, grab yourself a map and look at the Missouri River. Look where Augusta is, and look where Washington is. How does it take a half an hour to go, what, 4 miles?
Yeah, well, maybe if you get stuck in the mud.
I'm going
don't you think? And by the way, aren't there any strong trees? Couldn't you get some good hemp rope and just tie it to a strong oak tree, Brad? Like, that's all you need.
Well, what's interesting, there are no trees on the riverfront down there, at least at that, where in front of the park and stuff like that. A really nice boat ramp. There's a lot of people that put their boat in at the park down there. You have to. The only problem is, every once in a while, someone with a big boat, you have to watch because sometimes it'll get stuck on the train tracks. Do you know about that? That's sort of a weird deal.
No, I don't know that.
You got to cross over the train tracks to get to the river. But anyway, see, you're not a Washington guy like me, although even though I was there for 20 plus years, you know my saying about Washington, you're not considered a Washington citizen until you have at least two of your relatives, two generations of relatives in the graveyard. It's got to be in the Borgia Cemetery, because if you don't have that, then you're not a really true Washingtonian. You're just a fake Washingtonian. So that's the thing. If you want to move to Washington.
Well, we've had a whole conversation about Washmo without you taking a swipe at the dick houses. So I think it's a little personal growth, Brad. You're beating yourself up over passing by a dead kid in a car, which is not a constructive thought. And you're not talking about the dick houses obsessively. This is great progress, Brad. But in our next session, I want you to bring your notebook of other gains that you've made, okay? We're at our time right now.
I don't think the dick houses live in Washington. I know that Chris lives in Union, and I think Scott moved out. I don't think he lives there anymore. Because he's I think he lives in D.C. now, doesn't he? Isn't he like a big consultant? No, seriously. Doesn't he live in Washington, D.C.? I think he's like a big consultant.
No, he does not live in Washington.
Where does he live? Do you know where he lives? Does he live in Washington still?
If I knew, I wouldn't tell you. I certainly wouldn't tell you, because it would become a whole thing.
And you know what I say to that, John?
Unicorn fart dust. That's right. Unicorn fart dust.
That's what I say, John.
Worst trend of 2020. I thought it was going to be once again, but it turns out that the unicorn thing is the worst trend of 2025 so far.